Hi guys, how are you? Hope you're well. Let's give it 30 seconds. Hi guys, so my name is Jay. I'm an F2 doctor. So today I'll be talking you through the Horus eportfolio, which is one of the key things you'll need to pass F1, F2, to get the certificate of completion. So as I described, as I said before, is a very important part of your training process. Is an online record of your um, development as a foundation doctor. There's a lot of things involved with the Horus ePortfolio. Um, there's quite a bit of components to it, but at the end of the day, most of it is quite easy to get through if you just put some time and time aside to complete it. It shouldn't be too hard to have a satisfactory portfolio by the end of the year. Um, and your portfolio is usually assessed at ARCP, um, which is normally not right at the end of the year. It's usually around May, June. So I'll talk about a bit more about it later on. So key timeline. You guys are probably well into your F1 rotation. Um, you should have access to your ePortfolio by now. I'll be worried if you haven't. Um, and You probably know by now that each rotation is 4 months. And the ARCP, like I said, is between May and start of June. So the reason why this is important is that this is somewhat near the middle, near the start of your third rotation. So you won't have much time to actually complete a lot of your work during your third rotation. Most of it should be done by the time you start your third rotation. Apart from like if you need some teaching hours or whatever it is, but your main things should be completed, such as your multi-source feedbacks and most of your SLEs. So sorry about that, guys. So as you may know already, there is a mandatory forms that you need to complete at the start of each placement. So you'll have an initial meeting with both the education supervisor and the clinical supervisor, which I hope both all of you have already done. And there's also a end of placement meeting with both of them. And you probably know by now that it's your responsibility to chase after getting the or chase after the supervisor to get the meeting sorted out, and it's part of your requirements to have these meetings and for the supervisors to document these meetings on a form, which will then contribute to part of your portfolio. It is a tick box exercise at the end of the day. And also another thing to obviously have ready before your initial meeting with your supervisors, your personal development plan. You should always have a personal development plan done at the start of the rotation. It's not too hard to do. It can generally be anything that you're wanting to achieve during the rotation. It could be something medical related or anything related to that rotation, or it could be just work-life balance. I know some people just said they want to get more research or whatever audits in, and they will need to prioritize how time management or something like that. It could be something it could be something technical, such as that. or it could be something clinical. So personal development plan, sometimes your supervisor would like to see that before they meet you. So I would say every time you rotate into a new rotation, get your PDP done, and then obviously try and arrange a meeting with your supervisors within the first or second week. Obviously, if there's any issues with arranging meetings with supervisors, it's your responsibility to escalate it to PGME uh, or to PG and to anyone else. Maybe your clinical guardian or whatever it is, depending on your hospital policy. But usually, it's the PGME that you escalate to. And these are things that are needed by the end of the year at F1. So you'll need your PSA certificate. Hopefully, a lot of you guys have already have done it during med school. But if you haven't, you'll probably be told how to. You probably have an opportunity to do it during F1. Your tabs and your PSGs. So these are your multi-source feedback forms. I'll talk a bit more about that later. And your SLEs, which are your mini kexes, CBDs, etc. Or you also will need to do you need to show evidence of being involved in a QI project. Also, need to keep on top of your reflections. It really depends on what your trust or your PGME's rules are. But for me, for example, they expect at least 5 reflections, but these are very easy to do. It could be based on anything clinical or outside work, which may affect how you are as a doctor. It's really up to you what you want to reflect on. And Form R, which is something that you will have to complete at the end, near the end of your year, which so near placement 3. You just in this form you just summarize all the absences if you had any complaints, hopefully which you don't have, but you will have to declare it. And if you want to, you can choose to put any compliments or any good things that you want to highlight that you achieved during the year. So I think we've already gone through the supervisor meetings. As I explained, initial meetings within the first 2 to 3 weeks, end of placement meetings every rotation, and your final rotation, just before your ARCP, you'll have your final end of year report, which will be with the education supervisor. It won't be your end of placement meeting with them. It will just be that will supersede this. And then you'll have your normal end of placement meeting with your clinical supervisor. Those probably will be one of the last few things you'll be doing just to finish up your portfolio ready for ARCP. So supervised learning events. Hopefully you guys have had some experience getting some done. So mini kex, they're usually more observed encounters, such as if a senior doctor, registrar and above sees you doing a history examination or any other clinical exercise, such as doing a procedure or ward phone call. DOPS are mostly similar in nature to our mini kexes, but mostly for a practical procedure, such as cannulation, ABG, ECG. Both the mini kexes and DOPS technically will need to be observed by a trainer. So usually it's a registrar level and above. For DOPS, I believe can also be an SHO level as well. So, sorry, no registrar level above. For Minikex and DOPS, it can be an SHO level and above, sorry. But not F2, it'll be CT1 or ST1 level and above. For CBD, it's usually registrar level and above. This is more of a discussion based on a case that you've had, and it could be the CBD could be based on anything regarding a particular case you saw or a particular event that's happened, particular to a discussion about a procedure, etc. But this would need to be with a registrar level and above. So the guidance is you should have around 12 to 20 SLEs over the year per East of England deanery, and there's no national guidance from the UK Foundation School on how much you will need. But if I would say look at what your trust advises you to do. But I think 12 to 20 is a fairly good indication of how many SLEs you would need anyway. According to East of England Deanery, you will need 2 mini kexes, 2 CBDs, and 3 DOPs. I guess this will be around the same with the other deaneries. I wouldn't think it will be massively different, but obviously double check with your own deanery. And obviously, I've talked about this already. Your assessors usually for CBD is a registrar level and above, and for your DOPs and mini kexes, it could be anyone from ST1, CT1, etc., and above. So your placements supervision groups or your PSGs, do anonymous feedback. One type of your anonymous feedback. So you need one PSG for the whole year. And these are forms that are started by your clinical supervisor. You'll need at least 3 responses. It could be anyone, senior doctors, nurses, etc. And then they'll be then sent to your clinical supervisor, who will then look through it during your end of placement report. It'll be your clinical supervisor that releases the PSG results, and the PSG you will need at least one. And as I'll explain later on as well, either your PSG or your tab, it will be ideally you probably need it done, or realistically you probably need both done by the end of the second rotation, because you won't have enough time to do either PSG or tabs during a third rotation, only because of the short amount of time you have between the start of third rotation and the date for ARCP. Obviously, even though PSG seems quicker to do because you only need 3 responses, it can be varying in terms of how busy your department or your rotation is. And if your rotation is very busy, you can imagine that it will take a bit more time for anyone that you send a request for to actually have the time to complete it. PSG is usually, in nature, the clinical supervisor will send it out to help. They can send it out to whoever they choose. I think depending on who your clinical supervisor is, sometimes they do take your input in, and you may have a say on who you want it to send to. You probably won't even, if he just sends it out to you, or he or she sends it out to anyone that they choose, you may not even know who it is. So at that point, it might be difficult to chase up. But then you can always have a discussion with your supervisor, and chase it up with them if that's the case. So tabs are also multi-source feedback forms that, unlike the PSG, you only need it once a year. Like the PSG, it's best to have it done by the second rotation. With the tabs and the PSG, you can technically do both within your first rotation, if you choose to. There's nothing stopping you, and you get both of them out of the way and you won't need to deal with it for the rest of the year. For the tabs, it's a bit different. You start the tab, and you choose who you send the feedback forms to, but you will need a higher amount of responses, which may take a bit longer to complete than a PSG. So you need 10 responses, and within those 10 responses, 2 of them have to be consultants. One will have to be a senior doctor higher than an F2. Two of them have to be a band 5 plus nurse, and 2 allied health professionals or other team members. Within the 2 allied health professionals or other team members, you may be able to include foundation doctors, but I think it varies with the deanery or trust. So double check how many foundation doctors you're able to include in your tab. Your tab, unlike your peers, released by your education supervisor during your end of rotation meeting with him. Sorry, guys, that was just a bit of a delay in loading the next slide. So another 2 SLEs that are important to know is your teaching, your DCT SLE, which is basically an observation of you doing a teaching session. It could be a ward teaching session, or it could be a foundation teaching session, or it could be an external from your trust. It could be outside with a medical education platform, for example. As long as you can get it signed off by a senior doctor, this will contribute to your DCT. I believe you'll need 1 DCT as well, as well as 1 QI project. So both of these you need, and will show you evidence of 1 of each. The QI ticket, you don't need to get it signed off by, but it's probably evident that you probably will need to show some evidence that you are involved in a QI project of some sort. Maybe your trust releases certificates of if once the audit or whatever has been done. So it says it's a QI, but technically you can do an audit. You can be involved in an audit and also get it ticked off. But obviously, double check with your trust or your PGME team, because it can, from what I understand, it can vary between different PGMEs. Some may be more strict, some may be more lenient with it. And both of these directly link to 2 learning outcomes within Horus portfolio. So if you technically, I would suggest getting as much teaching or quality improvement projects done, because as I will show you later on, you need to show at least 5 evidences for each learning outcome. The learning outcomes are where it says FPC. So for DCT, that will directly link to FPC 10, which is teaching the teacher. And for quality improvement, this will directly link to FPC 9, which is quality improvement. I'll talk a bit more about FPCs very soon. So these are additional learning and or SLEs. These are not compulsory, but it can contribute to your overall Horus portfolio. So your learn forms, they're more of an extension with a mandatory reflection part of it. So they're like they're like a CBD of some sort or a mini KEX, but you will need to have structured reflection and an action plan. I'm not sure many people have done a learn form. Leader form may be more common. They're just there to show evidence of where you've shown leadership skills. So if you've taken up a extracurricular role in an organization, for example, or within the trust itself, actually, a leader form will need to be signed off. Both learn and leader forms will be signed off by a senior doctor. You can also input additional achievements such as courses, prizes, publications, conferences, whatever you think that will help build up your portfolio. And these are quite important because these can directly help you with the competencies, which I'll talk about soon. Personal learning log, you'll need at least 60 hours. 30 hours of it is core teaching, so these come from your F1 teaching. Any other curriculum-led teaching that is usually organized by your deanery, and 30 non-core hours. These can also include some departmental teaching, extracurricular teaching you do outside of work. And it can vary from topic. It could be just all the QI related education, online modules. It's quite easy to get through them, but obviously, um, make sure you it's quite easy also not to go to teaching and being having being it will turn a bit hectic near the end of the year where you're just ending up going to several teaching sessions just to build up your hours. So I'll say start early, and then you will reach 60 hours quite soon, and then you can relax, not needing to force yourself to go to teaching sessions if you're not free. Reflections, as I explained before, they can be based on anything. You can link it to your high learning outcomes, but they're pretty self-explanatory. As I mentioned, it could be based on anything, clinical, non-clinical, anything that you want to talk about where you felt like you've learned something. So it's pretty self-explanatory. They're probably the most easiest part of the portfolio. There's not real guidance on what you need to do, as long as it's relevant and it shows that you're learning something. I think they'll be happy with it. There's not even a guidance on how many reflections you need. My trust said 5 reflections per rotation. So I'll say just to do as many as you can, but just get it done. So this is the important bit. So near the end of the year, all the SLEs, reflections, PSGs, whatever tickets that you've collected throughout your portfolio, you'll need to link it to your curriculum. So each curriculum, higher learning outcome, will have certain FPCs, they call it, and you can only maximum link around 10 FPCs, 10 evidences per FPC. And if I just show you my own portfolio, will make more sense. Hopefully you guys can see the curriculum overview. So there's 3 high learning objectives. HLO1 is about being an accountable, capable, compassionate doctor, and each of these HLOs are subdivided into more what you call FPCs, they call it. Each FPC looks at a specific thing that you will need to show evidence for. So, for example, FPC 1 is talking about clinical assessment, and you need to link as much evidence as you can, showing why what SLE links to achieving that outcome. HLO2 talks about being a valuable member of the healthcare workforce, and then you need to show it could be a tab, it could be a PSG, it could be one of your learning that you've done, that put on your learning log. So anything that you think is relevant. That's why when it comes to for HLO2, there's 2 specific FPCs which I talked about previously: the quality improvement and teaching the teacher. Each FPC you can only link maximum 10 pieces of evidence, but recommendation is that you link at least 5 in each FPC. So if you can do at least 5 teaching sessions or get involved with 5 quality improvements, that can be very simple ones. It will be ideal. It's not the end of the world. I think they look at it from an average point of view, but if you can reach 5, I think you're in the clear. HLO3 is more about your own professional development and your own creative development. Talks about ethics and law. So ethics and talks about ethics and law and your own understanding of medicine. If you've taken any taster weeks, etc. So sorry about that. It was a bit difficult trying to swap over tabs. But as you can see from my own portfolio, you will need to link each evidence, and also you'll need to write a summary narrative of why. From at the top of each HLO, there's a little column, and you need to or a little text box where you need to write in around 300 words why you think the evidence you've linked shows that you've achieved all these competencies. Usually you should be doing this at the end of each rotation by practice. Depending on the supervisor, he may want to look at your end of rotation meetings. Is good practice to get done at the end of each rotation. So as the years go by, you already have something to build up on, and you can build on. You can just add stuff onto it, change little things here and there. Otherwise, it's not much work to do at the end of the year, but you're just going from scratch if you're doing it at the end of the year. And depending on your own experience, my own personal experience is I wasn't aware that I had to do at the end of each rotation. I don't think my supervisor was aware either because he was new to the role. But so I had to do everything at the end, which wasn't too bad, but it would have been nice to just build up on things that I've already done. So my advice is just to have start linking your evidences to these FPCs as time near the end of your rotation, so you can start building up these evidences for these competencies, and then when you're at the end of the year, you won't have to do as much work as someone if you're doing it from scratch. So yeah, this is the curricular summary narrative. So this is to be honest, is the curriculum summary narrative, and it's the linked evidences is what they look at ARCP. So it's very important that this is done. And you can use to link your evidences. You can use SLEs, reflections, any of your achievements. So that's why I say, even though they're not compulsory to. It's not compulsory to add any achievements, prizes, posters you've won or you've done to your foundation portfolio. It can be very useful just to achieve those competencies and show evidence that you are achieving those competencies. And I think this is the most key takeaway: is don't leave anything to the end, because then most of the foundation portfolio is quite easy to go through. It just requires a bit of time, and the more you do it as from the start, bit by bit, the easier your life will be near the end of the year. You won't be as stressed running around trying to complete things. So I think that's the main key takeaway. So at the end of the year, you have ARCP outcomes as foundation doctors. Outcome 6 is not really relevant for any of you guys who are in F1. That'll be more for F2 doctors. But outcome 1 is what most for all of you will probably want. Number 3, it's for inadequate progress. This is usually if you've taken probably too many sick days, or they think you've taken too much time out, because in F1 you're only allowed 20. I think 20 or so sick days. Strike days are also included in this. So there's any time out of training which is not authorized annual leave or study leave. Number 4 is not really relevant for most people, but it's self-explanatory. And number 5 is why I say your portfolio, even though it's quite easy to do, is a very important piece of document for you to progress through foundation program. Because if you get number 5, it's not the best of use. It's not that you'll be kicked out of F1 or F2, but probably need extra time, but I don't think anyone will want to be in that position in the first place anyway. And number 8 and the other one is not really relevant. So thank you guys. Hopefully that session was useful, and hopefully you found it useful that I went through all the key components of the Horus portfolio. If you guys could scan this QR code, you can use the certificate from this for your personal learning log. You get a certificate of attending, and then also if you can fill out the feedback form as well, it'll be greatly appreciated. I'm just going to go through any questions. Sorry. Okay, greatly appreciated. If any of you can, if any of you have any questions, please do comment on the chat. But if not, thank you for joining.